What's going on, you guys? Slim here with a new video today, and here to bring you guys another first place winning OTS championship deck profile. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing. Be sure to hit the notification bell. That way you guys will be notified whenever I upload. And yeah, I told you guys in the community tab I'm going to be featuring a lot of decks from the OTS championships that took place this past weekend. Shout out to all the players who participated, who supported their local OTS stores in these events. Again, these events are amazing. For those of you that don't know, they're pretty similar almost to a regionals. You play a decent amount of rounds, and you know, if you make top 4, you get your invite to nationals, which is amazing. Again, we talked about in the last video that it's very convenient for players who aren't able to make it out to a lot of regional events. You know, being able to go to your local card shop and actually still compete for your invite is amazing, because I think it's a lot easier to try to attend one event than to trying to attend multiple throughout the year. So it's fantastic. Shout out to my boy Ruben. He sent me his deck list. Those of you that know Ruben, he top 4'd the UDS with Spiral. Very good Spiral player, one of the best Spiral players in my opinion, and he was kind enough to send me his list. As you guys can see, he played the Wombo combo build with the scraps and whatnot, and it's awesome. Also got some nice tech here in the main deck. So yeah, we're getting into the main deck and just talk about it, and yeah, it's awesome. So we'll get into it. So one thing I really liked about his build, you guys will notice he's playing some cards you might not have seen actually in these builds, and the first one is the Crystron Rosenik. So this one being just like basically a free summon, and you're able to do a lot of your combos with this. The scrap combo calls for this. The being able to make a Boral Savage as well calls for this. And like you guys, I've already told you guys, he plays the deck a little differently, is that you do the normal Spiral stuff, but you also have the ability to add in a Boral Savage Dragon, which is fantastic. Being able to just, you know, set up this really unbreakable board is nuts. So you play this card in the combo. A lot of people may look at it as a brick, but you are able to play cards like this as long with Jet Synchron. And these cards just really help you extend and do more plays. It raises the ceiling of this deck. Not that it needed to raise the ceiling anymore, but it already does that. So these are just two really cool cards that he decided to play in here, in addition to playing the scrap engine. So very cool. Of course, the Triple Magician Soul, there's no way around this. If you're playing Spiral this format, you have to play this card. I know this card was designed for Dark Magicians, but Spirals just do it better. It's crazy to see like how one card basically changed this whole deck. It made it to where it was able to brought back to the light, being able to be brought back to life after so many years. So it's crazy. You know, Spirals is nuts because of this card. This card is insane. And then on to your normal Spiral culprits, you've got, of course, the one drone, stacks your opponent's deck legally. The one Last Resort, the 2 copies of Master Plan. You do have to play 2 because you are playing Souls. You don't want to dead draw this and then not be able to resolve Souls. So this card is nuts. You always just send it with Souls effect. You got, of course, the one quick fix. This card can be revived multiple times. This card does so much. Yeah, this card is nuts. Even at 1, it's still nuts. When it was at 3, this deck was absolutely broken. So the fact that it's still at 1 and still doing so much damage, it's crazy. Probably one of the most hated cards, the one sleeper. This card is so hard to out for a lot of decks, especially when you equip it with Last Resort. A lot of times you can just sit on this and Last Resort, and your opponent struggles just to out this card. Being able to pop 2 cards every turn is insane. Having protection with Spiral Resort up is nuts as well. And just anything else that this deck can, you know, tutor out. So it's pretty crazy. This card is just insane. One of the best boss monsters in the game, in my opinion. Whether you like Spiral or not, there's no denying how powerful this card really is. Got the 2 copies of Super Agent and the 1 copy of Tough. These are your board breaker cards, you know, especially if you go second, you can just call, you know, if you open drones being able to stack and then being able to call the card correctly is insane. I think that's one of the coolest things about this deck. Again, whether you like it or not, it's really a cool mechanic to see, like being able to call your opponent's top cards, calling it right, and then getting rewarded for it is insane. So for the scrap engine, of course, you do have the 1 refrigerator, the 1 brick. You do need to play this card though, because for the combo with Scrap Wyvern and whatnot, you need it. So you need that, and of course the triple scrap recycler. This card just sends anything, so it's great. Being able to send the 1 machine to from the deck to the grave is fantastic. So this card is nuts. That's it for the monsters. You guys notice he's not playing any hand traps. I guess it just definitely wasn't needed. Now again, this was an OTS championship. There's actually 8 rounds. He told me he went 8-0, so just know that he went completely undefeated with this deck. So this deck is insane. If you guys think about it, 8-0, 8 rounds of Swiss, even in a locals, is similar to a regional. So you're pretty much there all day. So it's pretty crazy when you think about it. Even these OTS championships, you still fight to do well at these events. So it's pretty crazy. On to the spells. Of course, triple call by the grave. You need your combos to resolve. This just catches everything. Joel Lockbird, DD Crow, whatever it is that you needed to be caught. This card is fantastic. It's also great going first. Being able to just set it, then your opponent tries to do stuff, and you just call by the grave. It is nuts. So card's fantastic. He plays all the foolishes, of course, the 1 foolish burial, because the card is just nuts. Then the 2 copies of goods. Being able to send your trap is fantastic. You got the 1 Monster Reborn, just an extender. Card's nice. Monsterborn's always been good. This is where it gets interesting. He decided to main deck triple copies of Mystic Mine, so a lot of players haven't been really playing this card that much in this deck, but what's crazy about this card is that Mystic Mine is able to just kind of stall you out till you draw to what you need. The opponent can't really deal with it if they don't main an out to it. A lot of times it can be a free win, like if you can break your opponent's board and then Mystic Mine them, or if you can just activate Mystic Mine and they don't have an out. It's crazy. I know this card is still one of the most hated cards in the game, one of the most degenerate cards in the game, but it's absolutely necessary in this format. If you're not playing it and your opponent is, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Not only do you need to have an out to it, but you also need to be able to play it yourself in order to, even the tide against your opponent. Like I said, this deck can play it really well. Just kind of get to what you need. Then you can just set Resort over it. Or you can set another copy of Mine over it and literally just blow your opponent out and just set up a board that they can't break. So it's pretty crazy. The one copy of 1-for-1, of course, you resolve this, it's full combo. If this card resolves unhinged, the game is pretty much over. Every time I've seen this card resolve, it's usually game over. It's full combo and then some, so 1-for-1 is absolutely insane. He's got 2 copies of Car for recursion. A lot of players go back and forth whether they want 1 or 2 cars. The reason why he's playing 2 cars is you want that extra grind game. If the grind game does come up, because sometimes it does come up, you're not going to open broken every single game, but being able to have the extra car for grind game is really important. Then the 1 brick, of course, the 1 assault, and then the 1 resort, best field spell probably in the game. Most people will argue, but for this deck, it does everything. The 1 set rotation, the 1 terraforming, these are your extra copies of Resort, extra copies of Mystic Mine. A lot of times it just really depends what you're trying to do. Like being able to, set rotation or terraforming out your Resort is fantastic. 3 copies of Where Art Thou. Card is nuts, just level 1 synergy for days. Like this card is just crazy. Like this card along with Magician's Souls really just set the deck to a whole nother level. So this card is fantastic. Then you got the 1 utility wire. So the utility wire is actually the Mystic Mine out in this deck. A lot of players forget about this, but it is able to target a face-up card your opponent controls, place it on top of the deck. And what's cool about this is that, you get it off the board. You're not destroying anything. You're not really triggering anything. You're just placing it back on the opponent's deck, giving them a dead draw. So this card is pretty crazy. Some lists play it, some lists don't, but I think a lot of times players would rather play it if they're able to, because being able to have that extra interruption and also an out to a floodgate is fantastic. And then, of course, the triple rescue. That's it for the main deck. It's 42 cards. So for his side deck, he decided to not show 3 cards, which I can respect. He is going to other YCSs and events, so we're not going to talk about that. But the rest of his side deck, he showed off, and of course, it's a 2nd copy of Tough. This is just needed for the grind games against the back row decks. Being able to pop back row is super important. You needed this against Alter guys. You need this against Subterror, any kind of stun decks. This card is just crazy. 2 copies of Book of Eclipse, so this card is starting to see more popularity. This is one of the best outs to the sleeper board. Even though it can't book any of the links, being able to book the sleeper, being able to, just stop what they're trying to do and just break their board is fantastic. This card also being quick play is very important. Getting around problematic cards, it baits a lot of things. I think this card is fantastic, this format. I'm glad he decided to side deck it. We started to see some decks start to play this in the main deck or in the side deck, and I think this card is pretty cool. Just being able to shut down and blanket an entire board is really important in this format. 2 copies of Dark Ruler, no more. Self-explanatory. In the mirror match and other boards, you just need to break the board, and this literally just makes the whole board null and void, so this card is great. 3 copies of Twin, pretty standard. You need it against back row decks. And one thing is you would rather play Twin in this deck because you're able to send some of your Spiral cards to the graveyard. Being able to discard a card like Rescue is fantastic. It has graveyard synergy, and that's really important. So Twin Twister is great there. The 1 copy of Anti-Spell, if you guys notice, he's only playing 1 copy. The reason being is you're able to set it with Griffin. He's playing Curious and Griffin in this deck, so being able to send it with Curious and set it with Griffin is fantastic. You just blow out the Shadal deck and any of the decks that rely heavily on spells. And of course, you auto beat Pendulum with this card. And then the triple copies of Evenly Matched, because Evenly Matched is one of the best cards in this format, and you need it to break a board or just to stop any kind of back row deck. Extra deck real quick. So since he is playing more wombo combo cards and more extenders, he is able to play the Boral Savage Dragon. This, in addition to any of your other negates, is fantastic. Like, this card is amazing. This being an Omni negate is super important. A lot of people forget that. That's really important when you're playing against just pretty much any deck that wants to try and break your board. Having an extra form of interruption, it's also pretty big at 3,000 plus the boost it gets from whatever it equips, so that's super important. You got the 1 copy of Princess Sprite, comes up sometimes. You get the Appaloosa, of course, because this card is just nuts. You get the 1 barricade board blocker, literally like chain blocker, can literally just stop your opponent from ashing you, so it's fantastic. Being able to use it with Resort is great. The 1 copy of Boral Sword, you just OTK your opponent. The 1 Curious, which I already mentioned, because you're able to just make this quite easily. Send what you need to the graveyard and then set it with Griffin. You get the 1, then all the Nightmares. You have the 1 Cerebus, the 1 Griffin, the 1 Phoenix, and the 1 Unicorn. They all come up. They're all super important. They all have their own utilities against against certain decks, so you need to play all of them. I think they're all fantastic. The one Link Karibo, because it does come up, being able to link away your Link 1 or whatever is just super important. Link Karibo is a good card as well. And then of course your 2 copies of Helix is standard. You need 2 copies as well because of Lithogasm. You don't want your opponent to rip your 1 copy if you're only playing 1, so you definitely need 2. And then of course the 1 Scrap Wyvern. So this basically does your whole combo, and this card is like actually insane. Like you just need this in a scrap monster, and being able to special summon back the card, destroy 1 card you control, another face-up card. It's ridiculous. Like this card is amazing. Like not only is it good in pure scraps, but being able to play it in this deck as well gives the deck an extra line of synergy, and it also just gives it more things that it can do, whereas the regular build couldn't do this before. So it's pretty crazy. Then of course the 1 Trigate, because Trigate, you need this against just against when you're making your board and whatnot, so it's fantastic. But yeah, that is the whole main deck, the side deck, and the extra deck. And he just wants a shout out, of course, Daily Grind. Shout out to Jerry Hahn and Daily Grind. He's got Zach and Shaheen for helping with the build. Free Kamal as well. Shout out to Kamal. He'll be back soon. And shout out to his locals for being free. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, that is it, you guys. That is my boy Ruben's first place undefeated 8-0 OTS championship deck profile with Scrap Spirals. I think this deck is amazing. I think that a lot of players will start to see that the Scrap build is really good. A lot of people do like the regular build, but playing the Scrap cards as well gives you more ceiling. Like you can do a lot more things with this build, and I think that we're definitely going to see this deck evolve as the format continues. We're getting into Master Rule 5 pretty soon, but I think for right now this is definitely one of the best decks. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think the deck is fantastic, and let me know if you're playing Spirals. Are you playing this build? And if you are, any changes you would make. What do you guys think of Mystic Mine in the main deck? I think it's pretty scary and crazy at the same time because it's already a problematic card for most people, so piling that on top of what Spirals already do is nuts. But overall, I'm super impressed with it, and hopefully you guys are too. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.